Welcome to the show that teaches you the things your parents and teachers are too afraid to, the Helios blog. Today we have a debate. Christianity versus Islam. Here we go.
The reason she's alone is because she's difficult.
Women are not accepting the bare minimum.
Women fuck men they respect.
All the women who say things like, I'm strong, independent, I don't need no man, like, y'all impress me.
Women just gaslight each other and say what they want to hear.
Okay, I guess I'll go first here. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulullah. Notice that for this debate, Sam Shamoon had to create a religion, a mockery, something which does not actually exist, in order to argue against the Muslims. No Muslim believes that Allah is 115 persons. Not even the Christians who didn't understand Islam, like John of Damascus, could come up with something so ridiculous. But we will find that this is the case in Christian theology, that God is another being. I mean, I do believe that.
Well, there's the Trinity, right? So, God is one person who is also three. That's the idea.
I do think that they believe in, what's his name? Justin Martyr, saying that there's another entity. Of course, they would like to revise that, but that's what he literally says. When it comes to the New Testament, Jesus says it's a person cannot have two masters, or rather that he cannot serve two lords. We look at the Jesus of the New Testament, he's at odds with the Christian understanding of the doctrine of the Trinity. We can even go a step further than this. For us Muslims, yes, the Quran describes Allah in a simple way, Surah Al-Ikhlas, but from this we get a comprehensive understanding. We say that this is a Jawami al-Kalam, or speech which is extensive. You can ask us almost any question about the nature of Allah, and in those 4 short passages, we can understand it. To the point that if I were to compare this with the Bible, I would not be able to find 4 verses that simply and reasonably explain the nature of God. If God loved us, he cared for us, and he was merciful for.
Well, again, the Quran is more recently written than the Old Testament and the New Testament by like more than 1,000 years, so they could write it such that it's more legible. But anyway, yeah, let's continue.
For us, then there's a duty there, a justice where he would want us to understand him. But our Christian colleagues fundamentally cannot and do not understand God. I'll give one simple example
Disaster.
here. The God of the Quran was able to describe himself as one, absolutely one, needing nothing. The God of the Bible allegedly describes himself as begotten, a word of which the meaning we cannot know, and which we know was actually changed. For those who don't know, the God of the Bible, when he says that he is begotten, this comes from the Greek word monogenes. Unfortunately, that word today is not translated as unique. So if you're a Christian, does it matter to you that the Bible does not teach what...
In the modern times, it's not translated as unique, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't translated that way when it was originally written.
you actually believe. My friend here, Sam, actually teaches that if a thing, an idea or belief, cannot stand being tested by the Bible, then it is false. So I would like to ask him, where is the belief that Jesus is begotten using the Greek of the New Testament? Brother Daniel.
Yeah, I just want to say that they did exactly what I predicted in the opening statement. They wouldn't address the Trinity at all and the clear logical contradiction of the Trinity that everyone is aware of. They had to bring up these unrelated issues like the uncreatedness of the Quran, or that Allah has hands, for example. This has nothing to do with monotheism. Maybe they don't understand what Tawheed means. Tawheed means one God, it means monotheism. And this is the claim that we're making, that polytheism is the Trinity. The Trinity is polytheism. So tell me how. I want them to explain.
But it isn't actually polytheism. That's the point. That's the central tenet of Christianity.
Since their whole opening statement was bringing up the issue of the uncreatedness of the Quran.
It's actually heresy to say that God is multiple gods. It's actually heresy.
And the hand of Allah, how does that contradict monotheism. How does God having a hand, however you want to explain that hand, it has nothing to do, by the way, with Salafi or the other theological schools of Kalam in Islam.
30.
All of the schools are united on this. All Muslims are united on this. God having a hand does not mean that the hand has its own mind, that the hand is its own entity, its own God, its own person. No theologian has ever.
By hand, are they talking about like an assistant? Is that what they mean when they say hand, or do they mean like an actual, like a, you know, like what we have to move stuff?
Said that there's no challenge to monotheism of Islam by bringing up the hand or the Quran or anything like that.
Sure.
Or the shin. Yeah. And again, like you just said perfectly, 115 God, like separate gods with minds. The Quran doesn't have its own mind.
That is time. Okay.
Hey,
I will turn it over to Team Christianity here. This is the bottom of the first round here. Billsy, we got the timer for them. 4 minutes again on the clock. And when you guys start speaking, we'll start the clock once you start speaking. Do you going to ask something, Sam?
Jay, do you want to go or you want me to go?
Let me have 1 or 2 minutes, and I'll throw it to you. So I did want to address what Daniel said, because of course he misstated several things about what our position is. First of all, the argument about attributes was not that you believe that they're persons. Sam was making an analogy to show that you have the exact same problem in your position, and you have a double standard when you try to say that we have to solve this Trinitarian dilemma. It's a contradiction, but your view of the attributes is not subject to that problem. That's just a double standard. What's the point? Nobody said that you believe that the attributes are persons, so that's a misdirection. First of all, didn't Hikichu already admit that Paul taught the Trinity? And I think Ijaz disagreed with that. So which one is it? Did Paul teach the Trinity or did he not? And then I would also add that Christ does not have a human person, and that's why the notion about divine mind is a two-mind scenario where he shares a divine mind with the Father, and he has limitations in his human mind. That's why it's two minds. So you tried to say that he had one mind and it was separate knowledge. The expression where he says that he's limited in knowledge is a reference to rhetoric. And if you can read St. Basil, letter 234, 5, and 6, he talks about these issues and explains that just as Jesus says in other places that there's no one good but God, he's not literally saying that there's no one else good, because in other passages he calls himself good. He calls the Holy Spirit good as well. And so it's a feature of rhetoric. You have the same types of expressions in your own Quranic exegesis where you try to solve these dilemmas, but you don't want us to have that right.
Right. It's like, oh, you have various contradictions, but we don't have any contradictions. Yeah, okay. That's why there's no Islamic debate, religious debate, and totally not two different religious groups. Unless I'm wrong about this, but aren't Shia and Sunni two different types of Muslims? Am I wrong about this? You tell me in the comments. Maybe I'm wrong.
Sam, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, notice how Daniel conveniently wants to evade what the topic is. The topic is Trinity versus Tawheed. But I know he can't defend Tawheed because it's irrational. So he just wants to attack the Trinity, thinking that Tawheed wins by default. Daniel, you're the one who set up the topic, Trinity versus Tawheed. You didn't want to do it separately, so stop whining about it. Now, coming back to the issue, maybe you didn't hear what I said. The Quran must have a mind independent from your God if the Quran is going to argue with your God and the individual chapters. Here, Sahih Muslim, Book 4, number 1757. Abu Umama said he heard Allah's messenger say, recite the Quran, for on the day of resurrection, it will come as an intercessor for those who recite it. How does the speech of Allah intercede with Allah if it's a speech of Allah? Is Allah speaking to himself in a different mode? Then you are a modalist. So your Tawheed is modalism. But then it gets worse for you. Recite the two bright ones, Al-Baqarah and Surah Imran, chapters 2 and 3. For on the day of resurrection, they will come as two clouds or two shades or two flocks of birds in ranks, pleading for those who recite them. Pleading with who? With themselves? If the surahs of the Quran can appear independently, separately, and appear in visible form, and argue with Allah, that's either your God being schizophrenic, arguing with himself in different modes, so you're a modalist, or you have now separate gods arguing with one another, so you're a polytheist, or you have to believe that Tawheed encompasses a plurality of distinct entities who can then interact and argue with one another. So don't run and evade with your smoke and mirror tactics. Deal with the issue. you didn't understand what I meant about your God's body parts, even though you don't like to use the term body parts. And no, not all the Sunnis define the hand of Allah as meaning what you mean, because you have those that say that it's a metaphor for his power. You do not believe this. So I'm still trying to figure out, do you believe in a finite God who assumes time and space? Because if he has a hand, two right hands, what happened to his left? Maybe you can explain. He has a shin, he has loins. That means he's an embodied being. If he's an embodied being, he requires space. Unless you want to create another contradiction with your irrational Salafi anthropomorphism.
Okay, let's define modalism, because I've never heard this term before. Modalism Christianity, the doctrine that the Trinity is composed of three modes or aspects of divine self-revelation rather than three parts of God's. Oh, okay, so he's saying that Islam is like Christianity in that it is modal, like Christianity is.
Still 20 on the clock, okay.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I didn't know, because I'm trying to speak fast, making time. So yeah, Daniel, remember what the topic is. I know maybe sometimes being a little intimidated, you forget. Trinity versus Tawheed.
10 seconds.
Don't run from shouldering the burden of proof.
All right. So I will turn it back. That completes round one on, the first set of rounds. We're going to go into round two of this. I'm going to turn it back to Team Islam here. Again, with Tawheed versus the Trinity. Daniel, I'll turn it back to you. Or EF, or either one of you that wants to take it for 4 minutes on the clock.
Go ahead,
I'll take this. Yep. So this is quite simple. How is it possible that they don't understand that the Quran also uses rhetoric? In fact, in the Quran, Allah says he uses examples of every kind. So it's not that hard to understand it. But there is a problem here for Jay, because Jay seems to think that in Mark 13:32, this is simple rhetoric. Unfortunately, the scribes of the Bible did not see it that way, which is why they had to repeatedly change this verse over several centuries. They clearly saw a problem with it. If there was no problem, why did the scribes change it? Unfortunately, Jay, the scribes factually disagree with you. I'm sorry, but someone later like St. Basil trying to allegorize it is not going to solve the physical problem of your scribes changing the Bible. Secondly, Sam seems to not understand basic Islam. He begins by asking, what is Tawheed? Good question. Let me teach you. Allah is absolutely one. Allah has distinct attributes, and Allah does not need anything. He's not multiple persons. He doesn't rely on anyone or anything other than himself. He is beginningless and endless, meaning he's the first and the last. If I were to ask the God of the Bible, is he the first and the last? We know that very recently, the scholars at the ECM have decided that God the Father in Revelation 21:6 actually became the first and the last. That's a problem for the Trinity. Do you believe that God had to become the first and the last? Who made him the first and the last? For us, that just seems unreasonable nonsense. Daniel?
Yeah, so Sam wants to make a big deal about the Quran speaking. So he read that hadith. Sam is not familiar with the Quran. So in chapter 36, verse 60.
No, he's clearly very familiar with it.
5, we read in the Quran, on that day we shall seal up their mouths, but their hands will speak to us, and their feet bear witness to everything they have done. Does that mean that our hands and feet have minds? Did any Muslim in history ever interpret that verse, that the hands and feet of our own bodies have minds, yet they will speak for or against us on the day of judgment? So this is an interpretation that he has that no one has ever made in the history of Islam. But many Christians and theologians and church fathers have debated and discussed the knowledge of Jesus being different from the knowledge of the Father, and the will of Jesus being different from the will of the Father. Jesus has a separate human will, and this is what they will not explain. Also,
actually, that is not a thing. It's implied throughout that they don't have separate wills. Their will is the same will. Anyway.
Explain that problem, that contradiction. God having a hand, guess what? That's a problem for the Trinity as well, because the New Testament in Acts 7:55 describes Jesus as standing at the right hand of the Father. So what is the right hand of the Father? Is that in space? Does the Father have a body? Can you explain that? What is the hand, the right hand of the Father? Does he have a left hand? Does the Father have a body? Like, does the Father have two sides? Explain that verse with...
Right hand doesn't need to mean like by his right hand. It's an expression meaning he's like his second in command. That's standing at his right hand. It's a figure of speech.
Within Acts, and that's in the New Testament. So I'm very interested to understand if this is a corporeal, physical Father or not, or what does the Bible mean? Do we have an explanation of that? So it doesn't matter if you take the hand of God to be metaphorical, if you take it to be bila kaif, meaning without modality, that doesn't contradict Tawhid. It doesn't contradict monotheism. Explain how having a hand, God having a hand, means that it's not monotheism. That's what you can't do.
Jay, do you want to go or you want me to go?
Go ahead.
Wait, is my hard time up?
10 seconds. You have time left?
Yeah, you still have 10 seconds, but it's dwindling down now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, do you want me to? Let me ask Jay though, because we don't know. You want me to split the time with you? Or you want me to take the 4 minutes?
I need about 1 or 2 minutes. You can go ahead.
Why don't you go with your 1 2 minutes?
Before you guys go, Dan, did you get everything out that you needed to get there? Because I think there might have been a confusion on the time.
Yeah, I got everything out. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Cool. Just want to make sure it's all good. All right, Jay, you're going to kick it off on this one.
Right. So going back to the text about, are you ready?
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Going back to the text about the limitation of Jesus' knowledge, he said the scribes changed it. If the scribes changed it, why is it still in the text talking about the exaggeration of the limitation of his knowledge? When I said exaggeration or rhetoric, I didn't say allegory. So I don't think Ijaz knows the difference between the grammatical terms
savage
of exaggeration and allegory. I did not say it's an allegory. It's similar to other passages where Jesus
threw an ad hominem in there.
Jesus talks about straining a gnat, swallowing camels. This is called exaggeration. And so in the same way, he can say, no one is good but God. Okay, nobody believes that literally means that there's literally no one good. Like the prophets weren't good, Jesus isn't good, the Spirit isn't good. No, he's talking about no one is good but God the Father in a specific sense of God being the Father, being the arche, the principle, the fount, and the cause. The last thing I'll say is that we're not subject to the same problems as you guys, well, particularly Daniel, because we don't have the anthropomorphic error about God the Father. So what we believe about the mode of the Son coming into time and space, you have that same issue with Allah himself. You're saying that Allah has these parts, which you say are attributes. And by the way, don't you two disagree on the status of those attributes between yourselves?
Yep.
Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, let me piggyback off of what he just said. Now, he was talking about that the Quran talks about hands and feet speaking, they don't have minds. How do you know that? Where did the text tell you that? Notice his appeal to authority. He says, well, no Muslim scholar, yes, I know you live in denial, just like you live in denial that you're pagans and polytheists for a variety of issues, especially kissing the black stone. It doesn't matter what your scholars say, it's what you can prove. So prove to me that when hands and feet are speak, they're mindless. So now let's take your analogy with the Quran. So a mindless Quran will be engaging Allah. So you're going to have the Quran engaging with Allah, even though it doesn't have a mind of its own. So now we're back to square one. If the Quran is the speech of Allah, how does Allah's speech speak to himself? Is Allah speaking to himself, but in a different mode? You didn't answer that dilemma. Now, coming back to the issue of God and the right hand. Unlike you, according to the scriptures, unlike your position as a Salafi anthropomorphist, the Bible says God is spirit. So I'm going to challenge you to show me in your Quran and Sunnah where it says your Allah is spirit. And in the context of John 4:24, God is spirit, meaning that he is bodiless, incorporeal, because he's the creator of heavens and earth. But that God can appear visibly. God the Father appears visibly in heaven. That's Daniel 7:9, verses 10. Chapter 7, verse 9 to 10. Revelation chapter 4. So when it says that Jesus in his glorified physical body enters this heavenly realm where angels dwell, heaven itself is created and God can manifest in heaven, and Jesus physically being seen by the inhabitants of heaven, sitting at the right hand of the Father who appears visibly. But you don't believe that about the body parts of your God. You're not like Ijaz, a Maturidi. You believe your God has two right hands. Where's the left one? I'm still waiting for the answer. He has
disaster. Freaking disaster. Like, anyway.
Has loins, he has a shin, and he's going to put his foot over hell, and then you have the womb yanking on his loins. That's inside Bukhari. How many seconds do I have?
You got 50 seconds. You're good. Keep going.
50?
50
All right.
seconds, yep.
So now come back and address your polytheistic pagan beliefs. Since the chapters of the Quran can appear separately, in visible form, and they are interceding with Allah, they're disputing with Allah. How, if the Quran
30.
is the speech of Allah? Time up?
No, 30. I'm just saying 30.
Okay. How is the Quran, how are the individual surahs of the Quran disputing with Allah? According to you, no one thinks they have a mind. So mindless surahs have the mind enough to know who recites them, who to defend and argue on behalf of, and argue with Allah when this is supposedly speech of Allah. So is your Allah speaking to himself? Schizophrenic deity? Anyway, I think my time is up. Go ahead.
Okay, that is time now.
Yeah, that does seem to me to be weird. Interesting.
So we're gonna go into round 3 now. This is the final round of Tawhid versus Trinity. This is the top of the last round. 4 minutes on the clock. I'll turn it to Team Islam here. Whenever you guys go, we'll start the timer.
Ijaz, do you want to go?
Yeah, this is quite easy. So none of these points are defeaters for Islam, nor do they change or attack what Muslims actually believe. Notice the strawman that they have to create. They have to think that these are parts of Allah. Even Sam admitted, you don't use this language. So if we don't use that language, we don't describe it that way, we don't teach it that way, why is your opinion of how you read it in a very Christian way, I would say? It's very natural for you to create different persons for God. That's the very definition of schizophrenia. Let's get something straight here. Jay is incorrect. He made the statement, well, if it's still there in the Bible from Mark 13:32, that Jesus does not know the day or the hour, how does that mean that the scribes changed it? Yes, the scribes actually changed the meaning of the term, and what the academics have gone and done is translate, and they've tried to fix and adjust what the verse means.
Again, they're avoiding answering the question. They're actually, this is the comment I wanted to make, and I forgot to make it. They're actually not talking to each other. They're talking across streams. They're not actually arguing with each other. They're just attacking each other's text without addressing each other's points. No addresses being made at all. Not that I've heard, anyway.
Because it occurs twice in the Bible. And in the 2 places where Jesus has no knowledge of the day or the hour, the scribes try to amend it. There is no textual critic alive today who will not testify to that. So I put it back to Jay. Let's look at the manuscripts. Sam says that your manuscripts are from the 4th century, and verbatim he says that they're a problem because the further they go back, the more that they disagree. And this refers to Codex Sinaiticus, Vaticanus, Alexandrinus, Ephraimi Scriptus, etc. He says that it's a problem. So Jay, please address the problem. Please answer how God can be ignorant. Please answer how God can not know things. That is a God who is fundamentally a jahil. Lastly, on this point of Allah having parts, Muslims do not believe that. Muslims do not say as well that when the Day of Judgment comes and things testify, parts testify, that these mean that they are the mind of Allah. No one says that. Daniel?
Yeah, so there's a lot to say here. They keep saying that I'm Salafi this and Salafi that. Me and Ijaz are on the same page on all of these issues. You don't have to be a particular school of Islamic thought to defend Tawheed. So you keep projecting this onto us because you have no way to respond to our argument. And it's interesting that you're bringing up sects because Jay here has claimed that Catholics are modalists, that they're heretics, and that basically they are deviant. So what does Jay have to say about Catholics? He thinks that you're a deviant and a heretic, Sam, and maybe that you're going to hell. So did you clarify that with Jay before you even agreed to this debate? Second of all, for Sam, look at what Luke 19:40 says. I tell you, he replied, if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out. Stones will cry out according to the New Testament. Do the stones have minds? Isaiah 55:12, you will go out in joy and be led forth in peace. The mountains and the hills will burst into song before you, and all the trees of the field will clap their hands. Does that mean that the hills and the trees have minds? Sam, explain that. Or how about Psalm 98:8? Let the rivers clap their hands, let the mountains sing together for joy. Does that mean that the rivers have hands and they're clapping for joy? Do they have minds? Sam, please explain all of those verses. You want to have that kind of understanding of mountains, rivers, and whatever, and you'll say that these are not minds. But the problem with the Trinity is that Jesus has a separate mind than the Father. The Father has a separate mind from Jesus. They both have a separate mind from the Holy Spirit. That means they're three separate entities, and therefore three separate gods.
No, that's not actually what Christianity says. Christianity says that they're not avatars of this. They're not avatars. They're not separate beings. They're one being who's in three parts. That's called modalism.
This is polytheism. We don't have that problem in Islam. The Quran doesn't have its own mind. There's no one who ever has thought the Quran has its own mind.
That's an appeal to authority. You're not actually arguing against the point. You're not proving your point. You're saying Islamic scholars don't think so. You're saying an authority figure doesn't think so, therefore it's not true. Well, no, that's not how logical arguments work.
That is separate from God. But this is what you're trying to claim, not based on any text, not based on any hadith. This is just your assertion based on nothing. So address the Trinity. Why can't you address the Trinity? You have to raise these straw men against Islam. It sounds kind of ridiculous, frankly.
Jay, do you want me to take it?
You guys still got one. Muslims, you guys are done. You only got 142 left. You still got 142. That concludes.
Yeah. So I just want to emphasize that they did not address the Trinity at all. We addressed all of their complaints against the Quran, against monotheism, against Tawheed. They haven't even started to defend the Trinity. So this is a fail, a big fail. We can do, and Sam is proof for Christians. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, could I point out as well, they didn't address the problem of Jesus' status as being begotten being changed in the actual text.
Okay.
You seem to be missing the point that Sam admitted was a problem. Sam says that the manuscripts from the 4th century are a problem. He says Codex Sinaiticus
How about this real
trash
quick?
because it's filled with errors and heresies.
Real quick.
Why doesn't he defend that? Does Jay agree with that?
So this will do. Since you guys still have some time on the clock, and it seems like this is, you guys kind of want to have a little bit of a dialogue here. If you guys want, I'm going to have Team Christianity go right now. I'm going to give them their full 4 minutes. And then what we could do is, if you guys want, I could put another 3 or 4 minutes on the clock where we'll finish off this round with Tawhid versus Trinity, where you guys have open dialogue with each other. And I can put 4 or 5 minutes on the clock.
That's even better. Then I can corner them. They can't run. That'll be great.
So that's what I'll do. So I'll give you 4 minutes on the clock. Well, Team Islam, are you guys okay with that? Do you guys want that? Because it seems like you guys want open dialogue here.
Yeah, that's what we want.
You guys, what you want? Okay, cool. So, team, give the people what they want. This is what you guys want. Awesome. So, Team Cristiano will put 4 minutes on the clock for you guys, and then after this, we'll do either between 3 to 5 minutes, whatever you guys decide, on just open dialogue between the 4 of you. So, I'll put 4 minutes on the clock here. Whenever you guys are ready, go ahead and we'll start the clock.
Roger, you want to go first, right?
Yeah, so again, Jesus doesn't have a separate divine mind. He shares the same divine mind as the Father. And when he assumed human nature, he assumed a human mind. That's part of the fullness of human nature. So we don't say that he's separate, just like the persons of the Trinity are distinct but not separate. Just like you believe attributes are distinct, not separate. Now, I know that you can't seem to follow the fact that we're not saying you believe the attributes actually have minds. We're just pointing out that you have the same metaphysical problem, that you have a double standard for saying, I'm not liable to explain that, you have to explain it. And then when we bring that up, every one of your responses on that is a tu quoque. Well, doesn't the Bible talk about body parts? Doesn't the Bible? Yeah, but we don't have the same metaphysical problems as you because we don't have the same metaphysics. So, but you don't seem to be able to follow that. So that's a tu quoque. But other than that, the other thing I would just reply to is that Ijaz kept saying that all of the scholars in the world believe this. There's not a single one that would disagree.
Appeal to authority.
Has he read all of the scholars? He asserted all of these things. He says the scribes changed it, yet it's still there in the text. So he's just asserting these things. We don't know where this is coming from. These are all assertions. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, we will get into scripture authenticity in the second part, but he wants to change the topic because it's too hot for him. And in the second part, he just proved Muhammad is a false prophet, and he is, but for other reasons. But let me come and address. Guys, you see how desperate Daniel is? And he's talking about we're evading the topic. Read Luke 19:38-40. Let me show you the context as my time is fleeting. There, Jesus is being praised by children, and the scholars are saying, rebuke them. He goes, well, if they were silent, even the stones will cry out. Anyone with any common sense, but understand it's hard for them to read a text in its literary context. He's using hyperbole, that even if they don't praise me, creation will praise me. That's exactly the context of the Psalms. The psalmist, which is poetic literature, is personifying creation to show that all creation glorifies God, because creation is a testimony to the greatness and existence of God. Nice try with that false analogy, but I want him now, when I engage you, when I ask you, so are you saying to me that when the hadith, not your Quran, says that the surahs will intercede with Allah, that's not literal? Are you saying to me when the Quran will intercede with Allah, that's not literal? I hope you say that. And on top of that, what do you do with the hadith where it says the trees greeted your prophet, stones greeted your prophet, and at the last day, a stone will cry out saying, hey, there's a Yahud behind me, come and kill him. Are you going to allegorize those statements, Daniel Hakikachu? I hope not, because I'm going to have a field day at your expense. And what are you going to do with chapter 47, verse 22 of the Quran when you go to Bukhari?
That awkward moment when the guy you're debating with knows the Quran better than you.
Your prophet says there's a primordial rahim, womb, that yanked on your God's gonads. And he said, stop, stop. Are you going to allegorize that too?
You know what's funny? That sounds actually a lot like the Egyptian creation myth. Could there be some link between geographically close religions?
The fact that your God has loins, the fact that there is a womb yanking on his gonads, which is actually in Bukhari, cited even in Ibn Kathir. You're comparing apples and pineapples because the debate is over. You can't defend your irrational, incoherent, Salafi babble. And yes, I know you don't want to say the hand is literal in the sense that it's a hand like my hand. But I want to hear you from your own mouth, Daniel. Are you telling me that Allah's hand is a metaphor for power? I want to hear it. Are you going to say, Billah Kayf, it's a hand. We know it's a hand. It's unlike anything. We don't know how, but it's a hand. Because your God is not the true God. Your God is the figment of Muhammad's imagination. How much time I have?
13 seconds.
All right, so now an interaction. Get ready, boys. I know you want to change the subject. We're going to see how you're going to address these issues. So let's go.
What's the word? The gauntlet has been thrown.
All right. Okay. So do you guys want 3 minutes, 4 minutes, or 5 minutes for open dialogue between the four of you? 5 minutes? Okay. Can we put 5 minutes on the clock, please, Bills? So what we're going to do here, guys, is we're going to have it just open dialogue. We're on the topic of Trinity versus Tawhid, and then we're going to go into scripture next and authenticity for the next round. So I will go ahead. Who wants to kick it off first, I guess?
Who wants to do that? Jay? Or me?
Or Team Islam?
Well, I mean, the textual stuff is round two. I don't know why he just spent the whole time.
Yeah, no, because you can't deal with the topic.
So you go ahead.
The Bible holds your beliefs.
Daniel.
That's
Are
round
you saying
two,
that the
dude.
Bible doesn't
That's round
change your
two,
beliefs?
dude.
Well, yeah.
Does the Bible affect your beliefs?
Okay. So
Your
that's what I'll do.
beliefs now.
I want to know.
Guys,
I want to know
hold on,
if Jay
hold on, guys. Hold on one second, guys. Hold on. What I'm going to do is I'll just have someone who wants to kick off the first question of this open dialogue, and I'm going to start the timer. Who wants to do it?
Yeah.
Nobody?
Yeah, okay, well, I'll do it.
You go, okay.
Daniel.
So, Sam, I'm going to turn the clock on once you go. And then this open dialogue between the four of you. Guys, try please not to interrupt each other so they can hear you because it's Zoom. So they really won't be able to hear you if you guys interrupt each other. So go ahead, Sam. I'll kick it off with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, Daniel, I want to hear from your own mouth. The Yad of Allah, is it a metaphor for his power?
It can be a metaphor for his power. It can be interpreted in many different ways. It does not contradict. It does not contradict Tawheed. It does not contradict monotheism.
Yes, it does.
You can have an Ash'ari position and interpret it as a metaphor, or you can have a Salafi Athari position and interpret it differently. That explain to me how it contradicts.
Okay, can you stop?
Tawheed. Can you explain to me? I answered your question.
No, you
how
didn't.
how does God having a hand, however it's interpreted, contradict monotheism? Can you explain that? How does having a hand? How does a hand contradict monotheism?
Let me get to the point.
Explain it. No, you asked me a question. It's open dialogue. You asked me a question, and I answered you. Now answer my question.
Are you?
I answered your question. I answered your question. Now you answer my question.
What's your position?
Okay. What do you
I've studied Salafi, Athari Islam. I've studied Ash'ari Islam.
You've studied it, but you won't say your position.
What are you?
I have studied all of them. It's irrelevant to this debate. Stick to the topic.
Why is that irrelevant?
Okay. Your position. You've studied them.
Stick to the topic. Stick to the topic. What? Explain to me. So, moderator. He doesn't let me answer the question. He doesn't let me answer the question.
No, because you're not. You're doing a dodgeball. Now,
let me answer.
You don't have to like or answer.
This is not. You don't have to like my answer. This is not interrogation. This is not cross-examination. You already asked me one question. Let me ask you a question now.
Okay.
Jay, is Catholicism modalism? Is it a heresy? Yes or no?
It can lead to that if they're consistent with it. Yes.
No. Is it or not?
Well, it's a false either or, because not everybody who's wrong is necessarily a heretic. They're not necessarily formal heretics. You can have a material heresy.
So the Catholic position,
now,
is it a heresy or not?
It depends on the person whether they're hardened in that heresy.
No, it doesn't depend on a person. There's
you're asking me my position.
Doctrine.
I'm telling you my position. You're not going to tell me what my position is.
Okay, let me help you.
The Catholic doctrine is Muslim.
So don't let him filibuster because he wants to eat the time. Now let me ask you the question, because I know that's what we're trying to do.
Well, what do you think about that? Jay just called your church a heretic.
I'm a heretic. I deserve help. Jay, pray for me and ask the intercession of the saints. Now let's come back to the Quran.
So it's ironic that you're trying to pit me against
I ask the question? Stop being scared.
When you and him disbelieve in the same thing.
You don't believe in the same God. You and Jay don't believe in the same God. That's the point that we're trying to make.
That's not actually how Christianity works, but all right.
I mean,
moderator, you're gonna have to do a better job.
Yeah, here's the thing. It's open dialogue, and I'm trying to have it. How about this? Can you let Sam ask this question, Dan?
Yes.
Please.
Go ahead.
I know you're scared, Daniel. Take it easy. All right. Now, can you let me make my comment, dude?
Well, make a reasonable comment rather than insults.
Wait a minute. Your Quran.
You'll never get to me.
Right? Here we go again.
All right, I'm going to add 30 seconds to the clock.
Uncreated, right, Daniel?
Yes.
Okay, so the hadith that I cited, when it says Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah Al-Imran, will appear as flocks of birds interceding for those that recited them. Do you take that metaphorically or do you take it actually?
This is a personification of the Quran, just like the Bible verses that I mentioned about rivers clapping their hands, their stones
Where does it
speaking.
Say that,
in the Psalms, I'll read them again. In
no,
Luke,
not the Psalm, Hadith.
Yeah,
Where
so
does it say it's a
you're making the claim that if the Quran is personified, that means it has a separate mind.
So
and I put the point to, and I see now you're interrupting.
No, because I want you to.
Can I answer the question?
Good.
So I pointed out that just because there's personification, that doesn't imply that there's a separate mind. And I cited verses of the Bible. Your response was that no, this is just personification in the Bible. So personification is okay in the Bible. That doesn't imply that the Bible, that stones have minds and that rivers have minds. That's fine. But if the Quran does it, or if Hadith do it, see,
your position is that you called them parts.
You called them parts. Your position, or are you going to rant and rave because you want to eat up time?
So
you interrupt me when I'm answering you.
They're just talking on top of each other. It's very hard to hear.
You asked a question. Shouldn't we be able to ask now? You just asked a question. You answered. We should be able to answer. So, no, it's our turn to ask the question.
I'm going to ask you a question.
No, I'm asking you a question, Sam.
Well, hold on.
Sam,
Let's let Sam finish real fast.
Please answer the question.
Let's let Sam finish.
You'll never get to me.
And then
You'll never get to me. You're going to keep running.
Your moderation's got.
Are we able to ask questions or not? Because Sam asked to ask questions.
You guys want to run? Go ahead.
So, my experience, and this actually happened in the Islam. No, it was in an Israel-Palestine debate. The same thing happened. When they get mad, all they do is talk over each other. the Muslim guys. They're not actually letting them finish their points. They just talk on top of them.
Okay,
No,
Bells,
we're not
add 30 seconds to the clock. We're going to let Sam finish his point, and then we'll go ahead and let you ask your
Is he
question.
making points or asking
Okay,
questions?
so now Daniel,
Let him make his...
stop attacking straw man, because
Christianity?
in the Psalm you will not find where it says, "And the moon will come and intercede for those that look to it and venerated it." The hadiths I cited is about the day of resurrection. It's about intercession. So I want to know, what do you mean by personification when in those hadiths it's talking about the surahs interceding with Allah? Will there be intercession? Is that true? Will people need intercession before Allah? Is that true? So what exactly do you mean by personification? Because your appeal to the Psalms shows that you don't understand what a personification is.
Can I answer without interruption?
Go ahead, answer. We'll see how good you
Without interruption.
Yeah, go
Can I
ahead.
answer?
Yeah, and I'll give you Jazz some time as well, because he didn't get a chance. So go ahead.
Yeah, Sam didn't come to me. I said,
Yeah, they're just dictating the question. So
go ahead.
I cited verse of the Quran in chapter 36 that even your hands, even your feet will intercede. There are many things that will intercede on the day of judgment. That doesn't mean that those things have minds. Those things don't imply that those things are God, that those are God's mind. That's the thing. The point that we made against the Trinity is that Jesus has a separate mind, a human mind, and the Father has a separate mind. Now, Jay says that the mind of Jesus is a fully human mind, but does that mean the Father has a fully human mind as well? If not, those are two separate minds of God.
Not exactly, and they even said that that isn't the case. To be a human means you have a human mind, but God and Jesus share the God mind. I don't know if that makes sense.
So those are two separate minds, two separate entities, two separate beings. That's not analogous to your hands interceding on your behalf on the day of judgment, or the Quran, or your feet, or anything else that will intercede on your behalf on the day of judgment. Explain how Jesus can have a separate mind from the Father and they be the same mind.
So I didn't interrupt. So who you want to answer, Jay? Because he just wants to ask a question.
So the separation comes in the fact that he has a human mind that he assumed, but he retains the divine mind that he shares with the Father because he's a divine person. He's not a human person. This is an important distinction in Christian theology, that we don't accept the Nestorian teaching that Jesus is a human person. He's a divine subject that assumed a human mind, a human nature, a human will, a human energy. So he shared, it's a both and not an either or. So your whole question is predicated on a false either or.
All right, so that's
you
time
deny
right
that
there.
the Father has a human mind. So
real quick,
Jesus
that
has
is
a mind
time,
that the
guys.
Father doesn't.
Yes, indeed. Okay. Anyway.
That is time, but did you guys...
These are not mutually exclusive.
want to ask Ijaz a question, or did Ijaz have a question for you guys?
They wouldn't ask.
One answer. Go ahead, Ijaz. What's your question?
Yeah, simple question. Why
Okay.
did the scribes omit in the Vulgate that Jesus doesn't know the day or the hour when it addresses him as the Son, speaking of the person, not speaking of natures?
Yeah, ask me that in the scriptural debates, because I'm going to use that argument.
This is theological. This is theological.
No, it's
We have
not.
another
Scriptural
I'm
question.
asking you theologically.
Okay, they're done. So, this is a good ending point. I hope you enjoyed. This is a longer video than I usually do. But anyway, let me know in the comments if you like the longer videos. Hit the like, hit the sub, hit all the notifications. Buy my books like Hunter M, Adrian L. Tom, Bobby, Dylan, Renaissance Press, Brian, Andrew, Alan, Armani, and Nicholas. Shout out to you, most recent purchaser of both my books, Strategist Guide to Seduction and Quotes to Live By. Thank you. If you'd like coaching services, message me at theheliosblog at gmail.com. That's my email. And, of course, my books can be found at bit.ly/heliosbooks. Thank you so much for listening, guys, especially if you listen to the end. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.